My name is Matthew Santon Rutherford. I'm a quality practice lead with Testing Times. Anne-Marie is the co-founder and quality principal of Testing Times, and Anne-Marie will be running the demonstration today. We've got two classes coming up for exploratory testing, one with Anne-Marie on the 4th of March, and then another one which is online with myself in April. You can see the details here on the slide, and we'll be posting those details also in the chat window later on. If you've got any questions during the demonstration, please put them in the chat window and I'll wrangle those and make sure they all get answered. All right, Anne-Marie, thank you very much.
Cool. Welcome, everyone. So this is a live demo on structured exploratory testing. So what could possibly go wrong in a live demo? Well, we're about to find out. But really, what is exploratory testing, right? A lot of people talk about exploratory testing as just playing around. And really, it's got this kind of concept that anyone can do exploratory testing. You know, you could just get your business users to come and play around on it a bit and to see if it's okay. Now, that is absolutely true. That is exploratory testing. But if you're talking about exploratory testing as a means to finding really important bugs that potentially test automation is not so great at picking up, about finding those unknown unknowns, right? If we're looking at that, we really want to get a little bit more systematic about how we approach our exploratory testing. Now, today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a really short heuristic, which is called the DEAR heuristic, which I put together really just to help structure your exploratory testing. Because one of the big challenging things with exploratory testing is often, where do I start? How do I actually know what to do? And what if I miss a bug? These are all really important questions. So I'm going to try and use the DEAR heuristic today to show you how I approach my exploratory testing. Okay, so let's roll along. I'm going to use a live app today. It's called the RESTful Booker Automation and Testing site. You're more than welcome to join along with me if you like to, or you can just sit back and listen to me talk and describe what I do. We're going to be testing a very specific section called the admin section. There's a user login in this bit, and very exciting, the username is admin and the login is password, so you're welcome to use that. We're going to test the room administration, all right? And we're going to use mind maps in order to do that. Now, I find mind maps as a great way of structuring your exploratory testing, because there's many different ways of structuring things, right? So we're going to use mind maps today. And if you have an idea about something that I might not have thought of, why don't you put it into the chat, right? Because, you know, I think one of the great things is, you know, having that group ideas, you know, that often we brainstorm off each other. So you're more than welcome to put in ideas about what I might test. Not sure if I'll get to them all, but please put them in. As I said, put some questions in as you go. Now, I'm going to try and time box this to 15 minutes, okay, if I can. I get very excited about my testing, so we might find we go a little bit over, but I'm going to try and time box. Time boxing is another way of structuring your exploratory testing, by the way. So, you know, let's try and keep it to 15 minutes. Okay, let's go. Right. Oh, I wanted to talk about one more thing. Heuristics. Okay. Now, so here's a big nasty cockroach on my left, right? You're thinking, what's this got to do with testing, right? Well, a cockroach is it's not an invertebrate, right? Their shell is on the outside. We're different, right? We have an endoskeleton. That means our skeleton is on the inside, whereas cockroaches, their skeleton is on the outside, right? Which is why you hear them crunch when you step on them. But these cockroaches, you know, if they want to grow, they've got to actually shed their skin in order to grow. But we as humans, we're more fortunate that we don't have to shed our skeleton every time we grow. We have an endoskeleton that basically we move around with. Now, one of the benefits of having an endoskeleton is that we can actually adapt and react to things and change and grow a lot quicker than Mr. or Mrs. Poor Old Cockroach on my left here. And this is really great for us. It allows us to respond and react. Now, in our exploratory testing, we want to be able to do that too, right? We want to have a structure that enables us to help us test better, but also that it doesn't impede us. Now, we've all been there in our testing processes where we've had an external structure that really has prohibited us from testing well. So we want to try and avoid that in exploratory testing. We want to free up space that enables us to test well and have a structure that's internal. And so what we use in exploratory testing are things called heuristics. Now, I love Richard Bradshaw's definition of this because he's just so simple. Heuristics are cognitive shortcuts. They're kind of like those things that help remind you to do things, right? And so in exploratory testing, we have a heap of these different types of heuristics that help us kind of remind us what to do when we're testing. And this proves to be really, really useful, especially when we get to that point where we're stuck. And we've all been there, because that's one thing in exploratory testing. We always get stuck. It's okay to get stuck in exploratory testing. It's what we do at that point that makes the difference between us doing exploratory testing well, or maybe giving up and deciding that you've done enough testing. So we're going to try and use these heuristics today. As I mentioned, we're going to use the DEAR heuristic. Now, I've put this together, a really simple way of helping us remember what to do. I'm going to take you through these steps by using a live demonstration on this. So what is the DEAR heuristic? Describe, explore, expand, and repeat. Really simple. Here's our first mind map. So we describe what we see. Now, I can't emphasize how important this is. We want to describe what we see as much as possible. It sounds a bit obvious, but I find that if we actually take the time to describe and map what we're looking at, this helps us in the future when we get stuck, right? So we want to describe what we see as much as possible. And once we've done that, we want to explore what we've seen, right? And this is the time where we go in and actually start doing testing. And once we do that, we'll find some interesting things, right? But then we might get stuck. And this is where we start using other heuristics to help expand our ideas. And once we get through that, what we can do is we rinse and repeat. We just keep going and evolving as we do our testing. Now, we won't have time to do that today. We won't really have time to repeat. But you can see how hopefully you'll see as we do this, that we're going to actually, you could see this potentially that you repeat bits of it and that you're jumping backwards and forwards. And that's perfectly okay as you do your exploratory testing. That's what you want. You want to indulge yourself, indulge your exploration and expand your thinking as much as possible. Okay, so, all right, so let's go off. I'm going to now switch out of the demo, and I'm going to start sharing, I think that's right, the website. Now, some of you might have seen this before. I'm just going to make it a bit bigger. Okay, so this is the Shady Meadows Bed and Breakfast, right? What a beautiful accommodation. We all yearn to be there, and we can see there's some rooms you can book. There's a contact form, and there's a map, yada, yada. So really, you know, the most beautiful website, not, but, you know, perfect for testing purposes. So this is for a demonstration of it. So we're going to log in. As I said, admin, password. Now, of course, immediately you could start thinking, well, Anne-Marie, we could start testing that. And absolutely, I bet you've got ideas on how to test that already. But we're going to move into the room administration. So here it is. As you can see, this is where we can add rooms. So we've only got one room, but you can imagine a bed and breakfast has a number of rooms. And we want to record, you know, those different rooms. They might have different sizes. As you can see, you can put a number to the room. There's different types of rooms. Here you have twin, double. You can imagine how people might want different types of rooms. Whether it's accessible or not, right? The price, very important. Anything to do with price is always important. So always you've got to make a mental note. I need to test that one really well. So price, room details. So, you know, these are the different things, all sorts of things that you would imagine. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that first part of the DEAR heuristic and try and describe everything I see, right? And really what I'm doing here is I'm just looking at as many different things as possible. For the purposes of this exercise, and to speed things up a bit, I am going to show you one I prepared previously. Right, so I've basically taken every little bit of variable on that screen, and I've just plonked it into a mind map, right? And I love mind maps because, you know, I don't know if you know mind maps, but you can move stuff around really easily. So if you decide your level of abstraction is wrong, you can just change it as you go, which I really like about exploratory testing, because my mind's constantly shifting about where things belong and, you know, what's the abstraction level when I'm testing. All right, so you can see there's a room type. As you see, remember we had that thing, the types of fields, whether it's accessible or not. Now I've already got a question in my head about that, right? What does accessible mean actually? I mean, there's an implicit assumption we mean it's wheelchair accessible, but is that true? Maybe, I don't know, what else? Maybe there's other things. And this makes me think, oh, this is a question I might want to ask the product owner, and just to check whether my assumptions about what this is true. They probably are, but I want to check. Okay, again, price. Now this is a really interesting, there's an input field, right? We expect that, room details, all these different things. And so I've just described as much as what I could see. I haven't tried to really test anything. I haven't, you know, created questions. I've just described what I've seen. And here I've got just a little note about, you know, start with the basics, familiarize yourself with what you're testing, and note down everything you can see. Like, one of my favorite things is actually to know what I can't see, right? What's missing, what's not there. You know, that's interesting in itself too. So my brain is just trying to work out all these things. I'm not necessarily trying to test anything. All right, so once I've done this, then I can start exploring. And now this is where the fun really starts, because I begin to start asking myself some questions around each different area, right? Now, because I've suddenly been given a structure, I can sort of focus on a little bit more into different areas. Let me try and expand that. Now, for example, the room number. Well, it's an input field. We know there's lots of interesting things that we can test in there. For the length, for example, the length, whether it's an alphanumeric. What about different languages? And so on and so on. You can have a lot of fun around types. You know, can you add more rooms? Are there any different types of rooms? Can I edit the room types? That's an interesting question. As I said, what does accessible mean? And you know, is there something around states in this that might be interesting or worth looking at? So that might be a question I could possibly add, right? So this is binary. What does this mean? What might go wrong here? Yeah, there's you know, these are sorts of things, maybe from my past experience, how I've tested before, and I've seen these sorts of things go wrong, or maybe, you know, this is just something I'm just curious about. And again, remember how I said price, and price is really important? Well, I want to check that. I want to see whether, you know, what's going on in there. There might be some interesting things that we want to explore. And so as we go through this, we can start asking questions. Now, one of the things that's most key with exploration is actually testing the time. It's actually testing the website. So let's just go ahead and see if we can do that. Apologies, it's not very, it's all at the top. But okay, so we could test a lot of things. I'm going to focus just at this point on the price, right? Now, one of the first things that I've noticed, as we said, is an input field. But what's interesting here is, what about the actual, what's the currency, right? I mean, it says above 100, and 100 of what? Is it 100 potatoes? 100, I don't know, marbles? Look, I suspect it might be pounds, but we just don't know for sure, and we should probably check that out. Maybe that's another question we can directly ask the PO, or, you know, there's other ways that we could explore that. But we're going to test this. So I'm just thinking what sort of things that we could put in there. Well, the previous one is 100. Now, often I start off with just doing a really nice safe test just to see what happens. So I'm just going to go 100, Now, there's two things I could do here, right? I could press the enter, or else I could hit the create button. And also, I'm being a nice person. I'm just going to do it in the safest way possible and see what happens. Oh, that's interesting. Must be greater than or equal to 1. Now, of course, I've forgotten to put the room number in. But this is an interesting feedback, isn't it? Because the feedback doesn't actually say, I'd forgotten to do that, but it's not actually saying what field this relates to. So this is potentially a problem for in the type of feedback that is being given. So something that we might want to do. So, you know, I'm just going to see if I can go back to this one. It's nice and easy. I don't have to jump between. But this might be something pricing. Well, it was really the room, right? And I could say feedback doesn't mention the field in question, right? Now, I don't want to stop. I don't want to get distracted by this because it's not actually what I'm testing, but I do want to make a note of it. So I'm just going to do that and continue my testing, right? So let's go back. So I'm just going to put 102 again. Well, I don't want to do that. I want to be nice. It's another test you could do, right? You could try putting in. There we go. Well, that's interesting. We've got a 1 and a 1. I've got some other testers in there. I was like, where did all they come from? Love it. Okay, so we've got there. It's a happy case. Let's get a bit more aggressive. All right, so let's put in 3. Let's see what happens if we put. Let's go crazy. I don't know how many zeros that in, but there's a lot. And then of course, you know, this is a test. No user would ever do that. And I totally agree, right? This is a very unusual test because most users don't, unless they're trying to actually break the system. But this is an interesting thing, is this tells me something about the system. This actually tells me, A, that there's zero feedback, there's very little input validation on the fields, but also potentially that there's a difference, there could be a potential conflict between the front end and maybe the back end in the amount of fields. I want to find out is, are they allowing large amounts of data into the back end, into the database? Or is there some sort of conflict there? Or is there a different ideas about how that should be managed, right? Because potentially there's maybe 2 different teams managing this. So anyway, I put it in, we've got a big blank page. So immediately this is something that I might, you know, I put in my thing for the purposes of today. I'm not going to do that, but you know, we can actually document that here and say problem in that field, you know. All right, where are we? Let's refresh and see what's happened. Have I crashed the whole system? No. All right, but still, look, I should warn you, after 10 minutes, this does reset. It's for security purposes. So, you know, maybe that's what something's happened here. But we can still see our 101. Oh no, that's the original one. So 102. All right, so we know this one wasn't really, this one caused problems, but you know, as we said, we don't really think a user would do that. Let's try something a little less aggressive. So let's just put 1,000 in and see what happens. Okay, so now we're getting something a little bit. There is input validation, but it's on, you know, it's on where is the boundary on this? Because when we put really large numbers in, there wasn't any input validation, or there's some sort of query or error happening that's preventing the database from providing that feedback. So we definitely want to explore that a bit more. Unfortunately for today, we won't have to do that. You can go off after this session and have a look around and see if you can find it and figure out what it is, right? So there's one idea that we might want to explore. We can immediately see that there's a potential. Now, when I see something around boundaries, and like I bet all of you do, I want to explore. So I'm going to go, okay, well, it must be less than or equal to 999. So of course, what does any tester do? You put 999 in to see what happens. Can it get created? And yes, it can. All right. So now we've got some more information around the pricing. Okay. So we can start putting in upper boundary. Okay, and we know that's 999. And we know that wherever there's an upper boundary, Come on, you can do this. Lower, lower boundary. And we've got a question around. We haven't found that out yet. All right. So there's definitely work we could do exploring around that. But even as I'm testing this, it's bringing back all these other questions about decimals. Right? Is it to 2 decimal places? It's bringing up all these questions about what exactly is that field about, right? And so you can start seeing how you can start really expanding this website to help you flesh out information that you're learning as you go. Now, you might be looking at this saying, well, you know what, Anne-Marie, our automation does a lot of this. We don't actually need this sort of work, and that's absolutely fine. But what I find really useful is that you can use this as a base to really explore other things. So here's one way of expanding, right? So imagine that you've done all that testing and you've filled it in as much as you've got, and now you're stuck. What do I do next? Is that it? But really, when you think about it, you've only explored one small area. Now, here's another heuristic you can use. It's this SFIDPOT, right? And this is, some people call this a San Francisco Depot heuristic. But pretty much it just splits up a product. This is excellent for looking at something from a product perspective. Probably not so good from a story perspective, but if you're looking at it from a holistic product, it's really, really useful. And it challenges us to look at things like the structure, the function, the data. Now, we've spent a lot of time looking at function, right? Look at all this stuff we've looked at about the function that we've put in, right? So that's the stuff I took. But we've also got the data, you know. Sorry, that's existing data, interface. Now, this immediately piques my interest because we know there's probably an API under here. And we really want to explore and find out what's happening about those input validations. Are they going through? Is there an input validation on the actual, on the database, or how is that being managed in the API? So we want to explore into that. And certainly we don't have time today, but we definitely would want to explore platforms, all the different mobile browsers, the types of users, nice users, and of course, nasty users too. And again, one thing I find that also always has problems is time, anything to do with time, any functionality or any question of time, it's always worthwhile just exploring. So you can see how this, something like this could help you expand your ideas about what to test. And this is a VADAR heuristic. So the VADAR heuristic is great for exploring APIs. So as you can see, it's verb, authorization, data, errors, and responsiveness, right? So it's just, again, something that you can now go down into the API layer and start looking at all these different things and investigate and explore what they might look like. And again, some of this can absolutely be automated, but other things just might trigger you to think about things in a slightly different way and just flesh out your model and help it expand and your information you're learning about the system to grow. All right, and finally, once you kind of expanded these models, it'll probably trigger you to go back and start again, right? Maybe I didn't describe it properly. Maybe I need to describe the API. Maybe I need to do this. And so you just repeat. And that, my folks, is the DEAR heuristic in about 15, 20 minutes with a few hiccups on the way. We're going to open it up to question time now. I'm going to leave this slide with the information about the training so people can take a photo of that if they like.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Okay, we're now 10 minutes over time. With no more questions or comments, I think we might wrap it there.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. I have enjoyed my exploratory testing as always, and I hope you have a great, it's Wednesday or Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. See you, Matt.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.